The air in the dining room crystallized as my mother-in-law's words hung between us. "Sophia, dear, I hope you understand that this needs to be just family." Her perfectly manicured hand patted mine with false sympathy, while her eyes gleamed with triumph. "You can surely find something to do while Jacob enjoys some quality time with his parents and sister." The expensive rental china she'd been passing off as family heirlooms suddenly seemed garish under the chandelier light. Around the table, expressions froze. Jacob half rising from his seat, his sister Natalie studying her wine glass, his father Robert suddenly fascinated by his napkin fold. The cruise brochure for Royal Crown Cruises lay open between us. The Mediterranean voyage on the ship I'd personally approved the design plans for last spring. The owner suite she'd been bragging about for the past 20 minutes had my personal touches in every corner. My name is Pamela, I'm 28 and an executive in the hospitality industry. This is the story of how my mother-in-law's attempt to exclude me from a family vacation revealed the true meaning of class. Growing up as the daughter of William Kennedy, founder and owner of Royal Crown Cruises, I learned early that true wealth isn't displayed. It's demonstrated through how you treat others. My father built his business on exceptional service and environmental responsibility, not exclusivity or pretension. When I met Jacob at one of our ports 3 years ago, he was working as a marine biologist on our coral reef preservation project. What drew me to him was his authentic passion for his work and complete disinterest in status symbols, the opposite of his family's values. I never told him about my family's ownership of Royal Crown Cruises immediately. I introduced myself simply as Pamela from Guest Relations. I wanted him to know me for myself, not my family name or position. When we fell in love, it was genuine. No wealth calculations or status assessments. Jacob's family was another matter entirely. His mother Irene lived in a world where appearances weren't just important. They were everything. Credit cards stretched to their limits to maintain the facade of wealth. Designer labels displayed prominently. Constant name-dropping and not-so-subtle inquiries about my family's financial situation. "Oh, you work for a cruise line?" Irene had asked during our first meeting, her voice dripping with judgment. "In what capacity?" "Customer relations," I'd replied, not mentioning I was actually directing global guest experience for the entire fleet. At our wedding last year, a simple beach ceremony on one of our private islands that I'd described to his family as a quiet local beach, Irene had sighed dramatically. "Really, Jacob, couldn't you have chosen somewhere more prestigious? I'll have to tell my friends it was a destination wedding just to save face." For 12 months, I'd endured her increasingly transparent hints about her disappointment in her son's choice of wife, links to job postings for better positions, suggestions about clothing stores where people of quality shopped, comments about how some people just don't understand the importance of maintaining appearances. I took it all in stride, partly because Jacob was worth it and partly because I knew the truth would eventually come out. I just didn't expect it to happen the way it did. Which brings us back to that dining room table, with Irene uninviting me from a family cruise on my own ship. "Are you uninviting my wife from a family vacation?" Jacob's voice cut through the silence, his knuckles white against the tablecloth. "Don't be dramatic, darling," Irene waved dismissively. She wasn't really invited in the first place. She turned to me with a smile that never reached her eyes. "I mean, you work for a cruise line. You can probably get your own discount voyage somewhere more suitable." I could see Jacob preparing for an explosion, but I placed my hand on his arm. This moment belonged to me. "You're right, Irene," I said quietly, pulling out my phone. "I do have some connections in the cruise industry." I dialed a familiar number and put it on speaker. "Royal Crown Cruises Executive Office. How may I help you?" My father's voice came through clearly. "Hi, Dad," I said sweetly, watching Irene's face. "Remember that Mediterranean cruise booking for the Gardner family next month? The one in the owner suite? I'm afraid we need to cancel it." The silence in the room deepened. Irene's expression transformed from smug to confused to horrified in the span of seconds. "Dad," she whispered, the color draining from her face. "Of course, sweetheart," my father replied. "May I ask why?" "The owner suite is your personal cabin. Did you and Jacob decide to use it that week instead?" Irene made a sound like air escaping a punctured tire. No, actually, I continued, maintaining eye contact with my mother-in-law. It seems there was a misunderstanding about family invitations. I wouldn't want anyone to feel uncomfortable on their cruise. Understood, Dad said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. I'll have their deposit refunded immediately. Will you be joining us for the board meeting tomorrow? Wouldn't miss it, I replied. Thanks, Dad. Love you. I ended the call and placed my phone back in my bag, then took a deliberate sip of water while everyone processed what had just happened. Your father. What? Irene stammered, her fingers clutching the edge of the table. Oh, I'm sorry, I said. I thought you knew, since you seem to know so much about Royal Crown Cruises. My father is William Kennedy, the owner. I'm not just an employee. I'm the director of global guest experience and heir to the company. I gestured to the brochure she'd been flaunting all evening. That owner suite you booked? It's actually my personal cabin, reserved for my family's use. I was going to surprise you all by upgrading your booking to our best family package, but since I'm not family enough to be included. Jacob was trying desperately not to laugh. Natalie had her hand over her mouth. Robert looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. Irene opened and closed her mouth several times before managing to speak. But you work in customer relations. I do, I nodded. Along with operations management, environmental initiatives, and strategic planning, Dad believes in understanding every aspect of the business. I paused meaningfully. Something about maintaining appropriate standards. The irony of her earlier comments about standards was not lost on anyone at the table. Irene pushed back her chair suddenly. I need to. Excuse me. She practically ran from the room. Pamela, I am so sorry. We had no idea. Robert cleared his throat. Of course you didn't, I said kindly. We kept it private because we wanted to be treated normally. Jacob loves me for who I am, not what I own. That's all I wanted from his family, too. I can't believe Mom tried to uninvite you from a cruise you own, Natalie said, finally letting out the laugh she'd been holding in. This is better than any reality TV show. Irene didn't return to the dinner table that evening. We heard her upstairs, alternating between crying and making phone calls, probably to all the friends she'd bragged to about her upcoming luxury cruise. As we were leaving, Robert pulled me aside. Is there any way to, could we possibly? The cruise booking? I smiled. I haven't actually canceled it, but if it's going to happen, some things need to change. Over the next few weeks, Irene underwent a remarkable transformation. Gone were the snide comments about my job and the not-so-subtle digs about social status. Instead, she became almost comically polite, constantly praising Royal Crown Cruises and awkwardly trying to show interest in my work. I read an article about your coral reef protection program, she mentioned one day, clearly having done some homework. It's very impressive. Thank you, I replied. Would you like to learn more about it? We're actually doing some exciting new research. Slowly, painfully, Irene began to realize that her obsession with status and appearances had nearly cost her family an amazing opportunity, not just for a luxury cruise, but for a real relationship with her son and daughter-in-law. A month later, we all boarded the Mediterranean cruise together. Irene, Robert, Natalie, Jacob, and me. I'd kept my word about upgrading them to our best family package, with connecting suites and VIP access to all the ship's amenities. On our first night at sea, we had dinner at the captain's table. Irene was uncharacteristically quiet as she looked around the elegant dining room. Pamela, she finally said, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it. I owe you an apology, not just for the dinner incident, but for everything. I've been so focused on appearing wealthy that I couldn't see what real class looks like. Which is? I asked. Treating people with respect, she replied, like you and your father do. I've been on this ship for less than a day, and I've seen how the crew looks at you. Not because they're afraid of you or impressed by your title, but because they genuinely respect you. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Welcome to the real family business, Irene. The rest of the cruise was transformative for all of us. Irene stopped trying to impress everyone and started actually enjoying herself. Robert revealed a surprising talent for karaoke at the ship's nightclub. Natalie fell in love with our marine biology program and ended up applying for an internship. And Jacob, he just smiled and said, "I told you they'd come around eventually." Now, 6 months later, our family dinners are actually pleasant. Irene still occasionally slips into her old habits, but she catches herself quickly. She's even started volunteering with some of our cruise line's charitable initiatives. Last week, she called me in tears. "Pamela, I just found out that Margaret Thompson, my friend who's always bragging about her wealth, she's booked a cruise with one of your competitors." I noted her use of "your competitors" with amusement, and this is upsetting because Royal Crown is so much better. Their environmental record is terrible, and I heard they don't treat their staff well at all. Couldn't you help me get her a booking with us instead? I want her to experience a real luxury cruise. I smiled into the phone. "You know what, Irene? I think I can arrange that." Later that evening, as Jacob and I were having dinner in our home overlooking the harbor, he asked me if I ever regretted not telling his family about my background sooner. "Not at all," I replied. "Everything happened exactly when it needed to. Your mother needed to learn that lesson about real class and status. And the fact that you got to dramatically reveal everything at that dinner had nothing to do with it?" he teased. "Well," I grinned, "I won't say that wasn't satisfying, but the best part is that it led to actual change. Your mother's finally understanding what my father always taught me. True luxury isn't about showing off or excluding others. It's about creating experiences that bring people together." Jacob raised his glass. "To family cruises." "To family cruises," I agreed, "and to mothers-in-law who learn their lessons. We're planning another family cruise for next year. Irene is already making lists of activities she wants to try without a single mention of what other people might think. Robert is excited about the new golf simulator we're installing. Natalie's going to join us during her break from the marine biology program. And me? I'm just happy that my family, both the one I was born into and the one I married into, has finally found its balance. The owner suite that Irene tried to exclude me from? We've renamed it the family suite because sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about making room for everyone at the table, even those who once tried to keep you away from it. Dad still gets a chuckle out of the whole story. He's even used it as an example in our company's customer service training, though he changed the names to protect the reformed. "Remember," he tells new employees, "every guest on our ships deserves to be treated like family, even if they're not technically the owner's daughter-in-law." Irene overheard him saying this once during a ship tour and actually laughed. "I deserve that," she admitted, "but I'm learning." Yes, she is. We all are. And our next family cruise? It's going to be amazing, because this time everyone's truly welcome. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles, zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one.
The security camera blinked at me mockingly as I stood on my own front porch, still wearing my scrubs after a grueling 12-hour shift in the ER. My feet ached, my back was killing me, and all I wanted was to collapse into my own bed. Instead, I was staring at Patricia's smug face through the doorbell camera, trying to process what she just told me. "I mean it, Emma," she continued, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against something off-screen. "David's finally seen sense. Well, this house belongs to our family, and you were never good enough for it. Or for him." The bile rose in my throat as my mother-in-law's face filled the small screen. My own front door, locked against me. 3 cardboard boxes with my clothes spilling out sat beside the door. They hadn't been there when I left for work this morning. I could see some of my clothes spilling out of the top one, hastily shoved in without care. My name is Emma Chin, and at 32, I was living through every daughter-in-law's worst nightmare. But unlike most women in my position, I'd seen this coming from a mile away. Patricia Williams had been trying to sabotage my marriage to her precious son David since the day we met 5 years ago. It started small, snide comments about my Chinese heritage at family dinners, constant criticism of my career choices. A doctor, but when will you have time for children? And not so subtle attempts to set David up with her friends' daughters. But over the past year, things had escalated. She'd gone from passive-aggressive to just plain aggressive. And tonight was clearly her grand finale. I shifted my weight, adjusting my grip on my work bag as I maintained eye contact with the camera. "Where's David?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "I'd like to hear this from him." Patricia's laugh crackled through the speaker. "He's not here. He's staying at our house while he processes everything." "But he left this for you?" She held up a piece of paper, what looked like a hastily scrawled note. "Would you like me to read it?" "No," I replied, already pulling out my phone. "I'll just call him myself." "Oh, he's changed his number too. Fresh start and all that." Her voice dripped with satisfaction. "There are some boxes on the porch with your things. Take them and leave, Emma. Don't make this more difficult than it needs to be." I took a deep breath. "Patricia," I said calmly, "I'm going to give you one chance to open this door and explain what's really going on. Because right now, you're committing several crimes. And I don't think you want me to start listing them." She scoffed. "Crimes? This is my son's house. He has every right to—" "This is my house," I cut her off, my voice sharp. "My name is on the deed. I paid for it with my own money. And what you're doing right now is illegal entry, theft, and harassment. Just for starters." There was a pause, and I could almost see the wheels turning in her head. "David told me this was his house," she said finally, but there was a note of uncertainty in her voice now. I smiled, remembering the day I'd bought this place. David had been hesitant about putting only my name on the deed, but I'd insisted. "For tax purposes," I told him. But really, it was because I'd seen the way Patricia manipulated him, the way she used money and guilt to control every aspect of his life. I wasn't about to let her have any claim on my home. "Would you like me to have my lawyer explain it to you?" I asked, already pulling up Jennifer's number on my phone. "She'd be happy to walk you through exactly how much trouble you're in right now." "You're bluffing," Patricia snapped, but I could hear the fear creeping into her voice. "David would never let you—" "I'm not bluffing," I interrupted again. "And I'm done talking through a camera. You have exactly 30 minutes to open this door and get out of my house before I call the police. Your choice, Patricia." I turned and walked back to my car, settling into the driver's seat. My hands were shaking slightly as I pulled out my phone, but my mind was clear. I'd been preparing for something like this ever since last Christmas, when I'd overheard Patricia telling David that he needed to man up and take control of his life. I started documenting everything after that. Every threatening text, every manipulative phone call, every surprise visit where she tried to catch me doing something wrong. I called Jennifer, my lawyer, and closest friend since college. She picked up on the second ring. "Let me guess," she said. "The monster-in-law finally showed her true colors?" "She changed my locks, claims David's leaving me," I replied, watching the house. "She's barricaded herself inside with some story about him staying with them while he processes everything." Jennifer's sharp intake of breath was followed by the sound of typing. "Have you talked to David?" "Can't reach him. According to Patricia, he's changed his number." I paused, a thought occurring to me. "She's done something to him, Jen. This isn't like him." "Want me to send the police?" I considered it for a moment. "Not yet. Give me 30 minutes to try something first, but stay on standby." I scrolled through my contacts until I found Mark Williams, David's younger brother. He picked up almost immediately. "Emma, thank God. I've been trying to reach David all day." My heart sank. "You can't get hold of him either?" "No, and Mom's been acting weird. She told me he was working late, but when I called the office, they said he never came in today." I filled him in quickly, watching as lights flicked on and off inside my house. Patricia was clearly agitated, probably trying to figure out her next move. "Holy, Mark breathed when I finished. I knew Mom was losing it, but this is next level. Want me to come over? Please. And Mark, bring your key to your parents' house. I have a feeling that's where we'll find David. The drive to the Williams mansion felt longer than usual, each minute stretching with possibilities. Was David okay? Had Patricia finally pushed him too far? And most importantly, what had she done to make him go along with this? Mark met me outside my house 20 minutes later, his face grim as he took in the boxes on the porch. Patricia still hadn't emerged, though the security camera had gone dark. She probably figured out how to disable it. I called Dad, Mark said quietly, joining me by my car. He's staying out of it. His exact words. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so similar to David's that my heart ached. I'm so sorry, Emma. I knew Mom was unstable, but it's not your fault, I said, checking my phone again. Still no word from David. Ready to head to your parents' house? He nodded, twirling his keyring around his finger. You really think she's got him there? Where else would she hide him? We took separate cars just in case we needed to transport David. The drive to the Williams mansion felt longer than usual, each minute stretching with possibilities. Was David okay? Had Patricia finally pushed him too far? And most importantly, what had she done to make him go along with this? The house was dark when we arrived, but Patricia's Mercedes was in the driveway alongside David's Audi. My hands clenched around the steering wheel at the sight of his car. He was here. Mark used his key to let us in, and we moved quietly through the silent house. Everything was immaculate, perfectly arranged, Patricia's obsession with control evident in every carefully placed ornament and straightened picture frame. Check the guest rooms, I whispered to Mark. I'll take the study. He nodded and headed upstairs while I made my way to Robert Williams's study. David had always felt safe there, even as a child. It was the one place Patricia rarely ventured. The door was locked, but I could see light seeping out from underneath. My heart pounding, I knocked softly. Dad? David's voice, groggy and confused, came through the door. Is that you? David, it's Emma. Can you open the door? There was a shuffling sound and footsteps. The door cracked open, and there he was. My husband, looking disheveled and dazed. His eyes were unfocused, and he swayed slightly as he stared at me. Emma? He blinked slowly. What are you doing here? Mom said... I pushed the door open wider and caught him as he stumbled. David, what did she give you? Just something to help me sleep, he mumbled, leaning heavily against me. Said I was too stressed, needed to rest. Fury rose in my chest as I helped him to the leather couch. Patricia had drugged him, probably with sleeping pills, maybe something stronger. No wonder he'd been so compliant with her plans. Mark! I called out, keeping my voice low but urgent. In here? Mark appeared in the doorway, his face darkening as he took in his brother's condition. Jesus Christ, he muttered. Is he... drugged? I confirmed, checking David's pupils. They were pinpoints. Call an ambulance. Now. The next few hours passed in a blur. The paramedics arrived, followed by the police. David was taken to the hospital, not mine, thank God, but a good one across town. Patricia was nowhere to be found, but a quick check of her credit cards showed she'd booked a flight to her sister's place in Florida. Jennifer arrived at the hospital just as they were finishing David's toxicology screen. The results confirmed what I suspected: a dangerous combination of sleeping pills and anti-anxiety medication. Enough to keep him confused and compliant, but not enough to raise immediate alarm. We can add attempted murder to the charges, Jennifer said grimly, reviewing the report. Along with breaking and entering, theft, false imprisonment. I don't care about charges right now, I interrupted, watching David sleep through the observation window. I just want him safe. Mark had gone to secure the house and change the locks again. The police had documented everything, including Patricia's hasty evidence removal attempts. She'd tried to delete the security camera footage, but I'd already backed it up to the cloud. every smug word, every threat preserved for the court to see. David woke up properly around midnight, the drugs finally clearing his system. I was sitting beside his bed when his eyes opened, clear and alert for the first time in what must have been days. "Emma," he reached for my hand, his voice hoarse. "What happened?" "The last thing I remember." "Your mother," I said softly, squeezing his fingers. "She's been drugging you, David. For days, maybe longer. She tried to make it look like you left me." His face crumpled as the memories started coming back. "The tea," he whispered. "She kept bringing me tea, saying it would help with my stress. And then everything got fuzzy. I remember her talking about the house, about you, but it was like I was underwater. I couldn't think straight." I held him as he broke down, his body shaking with sobs of rage and betrayal. This strong, kind man who had always tried to see the best in everyone, even his mother, finally facing the truth about who she really was. "I'm so sorry," he kept saying. "I should have seen it all these years. I should have protected you from her." "Hey." I cupped his face in my hands, making him look at me. "You have nothing to be sorry for. She's sick, David. This isn't your fault." The police caught up with Patricia 3 days later at her sister's house in Tampa. She'd been planning to flee to the Cayman Islands, where the Williams family had accounts dating back generations. Instead, she was arrested and extradited back to face charges. The evidence was overwhelming, not just from that day, but years of documented harassment, threats, and manipulation. The toxicology reports from David's system, the security camera footage, the illegal entry into our home, the carefully planned attempt to separate us and take control of David's life. Robert Williams finally broke his silence when the full extent of his wife's actions came to light. He filed for divorce and provided even more evidence. Years of hidden cameras in their home showing Patricia's escalating behavior, secret recordings of her planning to remove Emma from the picture one way or another. David insisted on pressing charges despite his father's attempts to handle things privately. He testified against his mother at the trial, his voice steady as he described how she'd systematically poisoned him, taking advantage of his trust to drug him into compliance. Patricia was sentenced to 15 years for her crimes. She looked smaller somehow as they led her away, her perfectly maintained facade cracking to reveal the desperate, controlling woman beneath. She couldn't even look at David as she passed him. The aftermath wasn't easy. David needed therapy to process the betrayal, to understand how his mother's manipulation had shaped his entire life. I stood by him through all of it, watching him grow stronger as he untangled himself from the web of control she'd woven around him. We sold the house, Too Many Bad Memories, and bought a small farm outside the city, somewhere peaceful where we could build a new life together. One evening, about a year after everything happened, David and I were sitting on our new porch watching the sunset. He turned to me, his eyes clear and present, in a way they hadn't been for so long under his mother's influence. "You knew, didn't you?" he asked softly. "That's why you kept the house in your name. Why you documented everything. You saw what she was capable of long before any of us did." I nodded, taking his hand. I hoped I was wrong, but I needed to be ready, just in case. He brought my fingers to his lips, kissing them gently. "Thank you," he whispered, "for being strong enough to fight for us when I couldn't." The occasional letter still arrives from the prison. Patricia's attempts to explain, to justify, to manipulate, even from behind bars. We don't read them anymore. Instead, they go straight into a file Jennifer keeps just in case. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that you can never be too prepared. But mostly we focus on building our new life, on healing, on the family we're creating, one built on love and respect, not control and fear. If you're watching this and something feels off in your relationship, if someone is making you question your sanity, your worth, your own perceptions, trust that feeling. Document everything. Build your safety net. Reach out to people you trust. And remember, real love isn't about control, it's about standing together, even when everything is falling apart. If this story resonated with you, hit that subscribe button. I share news stories about overcoming toxic relationships every week. And leave a comment below if you've ever had to deal with someone like Patricia. Sometimes just knowing you're not alone can make all the difference, because in the end, love wins. Not the controlling, suffocating love Patricia thought she was showing, but the kind that sets you free. That makes you stronger. That helps you become who you were always meant to be, and that's something worth fighting for.
The oxygen seemed to vanish from the room as Paige's perfectly manicured nail pointed in my direction. "Lisa, dear," she said, her voice dripping with false concern, "I'm sure you understand that this sort of vacation requires a certain refinement. Perhaps it would be better if you sat this one out." The Anderson family dining room fell silent. 20 pairs of eyes shifted to me, some with pity, others with barely concealed satisfaction. The elaborate vacation plans for Royal Pearl Island Resort, the exclusive Maldives getaway Paige had spent the last 40 minutes detailing, suddenly felt like a knife twisted between my ribs. My husband Oliver's hand found mine under the table, squeezing so hard I could feel his pulse hammering against my palm. The crystal chandelier above us cast prismatic light across the mahogany table, where moments earlier, Paige had unfurled actual blueprints of the presidential villa she'd reserved, the villa I was now being explicitly uninvited from. "My name is Julia. I'm 32, and a former barista with a secret. This is the story of how I transformed a vacation exclusion into the most expensive lesson my mother-in-law ever learned." "Mother, if Julia's not going, I'm not going either," Oliver said, his voice cutting through the uncomfortable silence. The tension in his jaw betrayed the anger he was struggling to contain. Paige's face hardened into the expression I'd come to know intimately over 3 years of marriage to her son. "Don't be ridiculous, Oliver. The entire family will be there. Your cousins are flying in from Europe. You can't miss it because your wife isn't—" She paused, searching for the cruelest words she could use in polite company. "Comfortable in luxury settings." "She's right, Oliver," his sister Vanessa chimed in, wineglass dangling between her fingers. "Julia would feel so out of place. Remember how overwhelmed she looked at the yacht club last summer?" What Vanessa didn't mention was how she'd accidentally spilled champagne on my dress that day, then loudly offered to buy me something more appropriate while the other guests pretended not to listen. I touched Oliver's arm gently. "It's okay," I said quietly. "You should go with your family." The triumph that flashed across Paige's face made my stomach turn. She believed she'd won, just as she had every other time she'd tried to separate me from Oliver since the day he brought home that coffee girl he'd fallen for. When I met Oliver at the coffee shop where I worked while pursuing my master's degree in business, he was different from the other wealthy customers. Kind, genuine, and never making me feel less worthy because I was serving coffee. When we fell in love, I thought I'd found my fairy tale ending. I didn't realize his mother would make it her life's mission to break us up. Paige Anderson wasn't just rich. She was old money wealthy, the kind who considered anything less than a private jet to be slumming it. From day one, she made it clear that a coffee girl wasn't welcome in the Anderson family. "Darling," she'd say to Oliver while I was right there, "remember the Rothschild girl? She just got back from Paris, still single." For 3 years, I endured her constant belittling at every family gathering. "Oh, Julia, dear, is that dress from a department store?" Or, "How fascinating that you used to serve coffee. It must be so nice to never have to work again." What Paige didn't know, what no one except Oliver knew, was that while I was making coffee and studying, I'd also been investing in cryptocurrency since its early days. Those investments had grown into a fortune that would make even the Andersons look middle class, but I kept quiet, living simply and reinvesting my profits. Oliver respected my desire to keep my wealth private, understanding it was the only way to know who truly valued me for myself. As the vacation planning dinner wound down, Paige was practically glowing with self-importance. "I've booked the entire Royal Pearl Island Resort for 2 weeks," she repeated, for perhaps the 5th time. "Private beaches, personal chefs, helicopter tours, only the best for the Andersons." I smiled and nodded, even as she explicitly excluded me from the guest list. But as we drove home that night, I wasn't plotting how to change her mind. I was checking my phone for a very specific email. 6 months earlier, when I'd first heard Paige talking about wanting to book Royal Pearl Island, I'd made a few discreet inquiries. The resort had been struggling financially due to the economic downturn, and its owner was looking for a quiet buyout. Through a series of shell companies, I'd acquired not just the Royal Pearl Resort, but the entire island. I had kept the previous management in place, knowing this day would come. The email I was waiting for arrived just as Oliver turned onto our street. Acquisition complete. All paperwork finalized. Royal Pearl Island is officially yours. You're being awfully quiet, Oliver said as we entered our modest home. The home page constantly suggested we upgrade to something more befitting an Anderson. Just thinking, I replied, unable to suppress a small smile. I'm so sorry about my mother, he sighed, loosening his tie. I'll tell her tomorrow that we're both staying home. I took his hands in mine. Actually, I think you should go. His eyebrows shot up in surprise. Without you? No way. Trust me, I said, feeling a plan crystallize in my mind. I think it's time your mother learned that appearances can be deceiving. The next morning, as the Andersons boarded their private jet to the Maldives, I made another call. It was time to set my plan in motion. Paige had no idea that her perfect vacation was about to teach her an unforgettable lesson about judging people by their backgrounds. While their plane was somewhere over the Indian Ocean, I was making arrangements of my own. My laptop displayed the resort's security feeds, a feature the previous owner had installed that was about to become extremely useful. I had set up a secure connection to the resort system that allowed me to monitor everything remotely from our home office. The Anderson family arrived at Royal Pearl Island Resort late that afternoon. I watched through the cameras as Paige led the group across pristine white sand beaches toward the luxury villas. She was already plotting how she'd share this exclusive experience on social media to make her society friends envious. Welcome to Royal Pearl Island, the resort manager, James, greeted them with the knowing smile I'd briefed him on. We've been expecting you. Paige beamed. Everything looks perfect. I assume the presidential villa is ready for me? About that, James replied, checking his tablet with practiced concern. There seems to be a slight change in arrangements. The owner is currently using the presidential villa. Paige's perfectly maintained face crumpled in confusion. That's impossible. I specifically booked the entire island. No other guests were supposed to be here. The owner isn't a guest, Mrs. Anderson, James explained patiently. They own the property and have final say over all accommodations. Well, who is this owner? I demand to speak with them. Paige's voice rose, causing other family members to gather around. James smiled politely. Of course. If you'll all follow me to the main pavilion, the owner has left specific instructions for your arrival. The family was led to an elegant open-air pavilion overlooking the ocean. On a large screen, a video began playing. My face appeared, and I watched through the security feeds as Paige's jaw literally dropped. Hello, Anderson family, my recorded self said pleasantly. Welcome to my island. Yes, you heard that correctly. I own Royal Pearl Island Resort, along with several other luxury properties worldwide. The stunned silence was broken by Paige's gasp. Oliver tried to suppress a smile, having been let in on the secret just before boarding the plane. I had called him aside and whispered the truth about my wealth and ownership of the resort. You see, I continued on screen, while you were busy judging me for making coffee and assuming I couldn't afford luxury experiences, I was building an empire. That coffee girl you left behind, she's worth more than the entire Anderson fortune combined. Paige collapsed into a chair, her designer purse falling to the ground. Vanessa's face had turned an interesting shade of green. Now, about your accommodations. Paige, you'll be staying in our economy villa. It's quite basic by your standards, but as you said, some people need to learn their place. The rest of the family can choose from our standard rooms. This is outrageous, Paige shrieked. I paid for the presidential villa. Your deposit has been refunded, James informed her smoothly. The owner's decision is final. The video continued. Oh, and Paige, remember how you said luxury resorts can be overwhelming for someone of my background? Let's test that theory. I've arranged for you to work as a server at the beach bar during your stay. Consider it a learning experience about judging people based on their jobs. Paige's face contorted with rage. I will not. Do you know who I am? Yes, James replied calmly. You're the mother-in-law of our owner, who has left strict instructions. If you don't wish to comply, you're welcome to leave, though the next flight out isn't for 3 days. What followed was chaos. Paige threatened lawsuits, demanded phones which mysteriously had no signal, and even tried to arrange for a private helicopter, all unavailable by my orders. For the next 2 weeks, the mighty Paige Anderson served drinks to her own family members, wearing the standard staff uniform she'd so often mocked. Every time she delivered a cocktail, the server badge gleamed with her name, Paige Trainee. But this isn't just a story about revenge. On their last day, I arrived at the island, having timed my private flight to coincide with their final day at the resort. Paige was serving at the beach bar, her designer clothes replaced by the simple staff uniform, her carefully maintained appearance wilted in the tropical heat. Having fun? I asked, sitting at the bar. She stared at me, her anger seemingly replaced by exhaustion. Why did you do all this? Because you needed to learn that worth isn't determined by background or bank accounts, I replied. Every person who served you a drink, cleaned your room, or cooked your meals is a human being deserving of respect. Tears formed in her eyes. I never thought about it that way. I know, I said softly. That was the problem. From that day forward, Paige Anderson was a changed woman. The experience of walking in someone else's shoes literally transformed her perspective. She started a foundation providing educational scholarships to service industry workers. And yes, she finally learned to treat people with respect, regardless of their job or background. These days, our family dinners are different. Paige asks the serving staff about their lives and dreams. She remembers their names and stories. Last Christmas, she even insisted on serving dinner herself, saying it helps her stay grounded. The Royal Pearl Resort. It's still mine, but now it runs a unique program where privileged individuals can experience working in service positions. Paige helps run it, sharing her story as a cautionary tale about prejudice and pride. As for Oliver and me, we still enjoy our morning coffee at the same shop where we met. Sometimes Paige joins us, chatting easily with the baristas she once would have ignored. She's learned that true character isn't about how you treat your equals. It's about how you treat those you once considered beneath you. Last week, she surprised me with a handmade photo album filled with pictures from that infamous island vacation. On the final page, she'd written, "Thank you for teaching me that the best view of life comes from getting off your high horse." I keep that album in my office at the resort, a reminder that sometimes the greatest luxury isn't about thread counts or private jets. It's about the ability to see the worth in every person you meet. And Paige, she still works 1 shift a month at the beach bar. She says it keeps her humble.